Theresa Caputo broke down next to her mother's grave, comforted by her ex-husband Larry. Long Island medium star Theresa Caputo recently broke down in tears at the grave of her mother Veronica. She is still struggling to come to terms with the death of her beloved mother. Her ex-husband Larry Caputo has been by her side in this moment of deep grief over the loss of her mother. Seeing their moment, many are hoping that Theresa and Larry will get back together. Fans across social media have one message in common: I want to see them together. However, Theresa put an end to that expectation in clear terms. She said, "I don't want to be with Larry." Despite taking a stand on personal struggles and past relationships, Theresa is grateful for the love of her fans. She is now just trying to live by holding on to her mother's memories. It was a gray morning on Long Island, the kind of day that wrapped the world in silence. Theresa Caputo stood by her mother's grave, the wind gently lifting strands of her signature blonde hair. She had visited the cemetery countless times, but today felt heavier, like her mother's absence echoed louder than ever. As she knelt by the headstone, brushing away the fallen petals of white roses she had laid just a week ago, her emotions crumbled. Tears escaped her eyes freely now, falling on the cold stone engraved with Veronica Caputo, beloved mother. She didn't hear the footsteps behind her, but the familiar warmth of a hand on her shoulder told her who it was. Larry. He said nothing. He didn't have to. For all their years apart, Larry still knew how to show up at just the right moment. Theresa leaned into him, the sobs finally escaping her throat. It wasn't a moment of romance. It was a moment of history, of shared loss, of two people who once built a life together, now holding each other through a pain only they could understand. People watching from a distance, both literally and on social media, saw the scene and clung to hope. Whispers of reconciliation spread like wildfire. "They're meant to be," one fan wrote. "Love never dies," wrote another. But Theresa, ever the medium, ever the woman who knew how to read both the living and the dead, felt something else. That love does change. Sometimes it becomes something softer, quieter. Not a rekindling of what was, but a respect for what had been. Later that evening, as she sat alone in her kitchen with a steaming cup of tea, she opened her mother's old cookbook. A note fell out, written in her mother's handwriting. Love doesn't always stay the same, but it always leaves something behind. Theresa smiled through tears. She didn't need Larry back. She just needed her memories and the strength her mother had given her to keep going. However, it was a quiet autumn afternoon in Hicksville, Long Island, and Theresa Caputo, the world-renowned Long Island medium, was preparing for a very unusual session. Today's reading wasn't for a grieving family, a nervous celebrity, or a skeptical husband. No, today she was meeting with a pastor, a rabbi, and a Buddhist monk, each from different parts of New York, who had come together out of curiosity, spiritual inquiry, and, in the rabbi's words, just to see what happens. Theresa, dressed in her signature leopard print blouse, high heels, and perfectly styled blonde hair, paced the room, clutching a rosary in one hand and a bundle of notes in the other. The doorbell rang. First in was Pastor John, a tall, soft-spoken man with kind eyes and a calm presence. Next, Rabbi Eli, bearded and jovial, with a twinkle of humor that made everyone immediately comfortable. Lastly came Tenzin Dorje, the Buddhist monk, robed in saffron and crimson, his footsteps silent, his demeanor serene. They greeted one another politely, and after a few awkward laughs about how this felt like the start of a joke, a pastor, a rabbi, and a monk walk into a psychic's house. They all sat down on Theresa's plush couch under the gaze of family photos and lit candles. Theresa closed her eyes. "Okay, so I need to say this first. I don't care what religion you are, spirit doesn't care either. They're just energy, pure, loving energy." The three men nodded respectfully, each in their own way open, but grounded in their faith. Suddenly, Theresa gasped. "I'm getting a woman." She's got a strong presence. She's waving a rolling pin. Oh, she's saying the word bub. Is someone here Jewish? Rabbi Eli raised his hand. That's Yiddish for grandmother. Theresa's hands fluttered like antennae. She says your challah is good, but hers was better, and she's proud, very proud of you, especially for your interfaith work, she says. She was skeptical in life, but now she sees so much more. Rabbi Eli blinked, visibly moved. She always said she'd haunt me. I guess she kept her word. The room chuckled gently, and Theresa shifted suddenly. Now I'm hearing a hymn, Amazing Grace. A woman again, older, sweet voice. She's clutching a Bible to her chest. Pastor John looked up. My mother used to sing that every morning. She passed 2 years ago. She's telling you to stop worrying about whether your sermons reach people. She says they do. She says even the ones who sleep in the pews, they feel you. Pastor John smiled, tears brimming in his eyes. She was always blunt. And now, Theresa whispered, her tone softening, I see a lotus flower, and a bell, a very old man, he's bowing. Tenzin Dorj's gaze didn't change, but his hands gently came together in prayer. He is your teacher, isn't he? Yes, Dorj replied, my root guru. Theresa paused. He doesn't speak with words. It's all light, peace. He wants you to know he's not gone. He's in every breath you take, every step you walk. You already know this, don't you? The monk smiled. After a long, reverent silence, you guys, she said finally, breaking the trance. Spirit just brought 3 worlds together. You each came in here thinking this might be strange or even sacrilegious. But Spirit doesn't divide, it unites. The 3 spiritual men looked at each other. There was a moment of quiet understanding. Different paths, same mountain. As they left, Pastor John hugged Theresa and said, You've given me something I didn't know I needed. Rabbi Eli joked, next time, maybe bring back Moses. Tenzin Dorj simply bowed. Thank you for listening beyond form. As Theresa watched them walk away under the amber trees of Long Island, she felt something she always did after a powerful reading, a deep, warm presence, as if the air itself was hugging her. Spirit, once again, had spoken. However, it was a brisk October morning in Long Island, and the golden leaves danced in the wind as Susan Parker sat nervously in the waiting room of a cozy, lavender-scented studio. She clutched her coffee cup tightly, her knuckles white, unsure if this was a mistake. She'd flown all the way from Oregon to see Theresa Caputo, the famed Long Island medium. Susan had never done anything like this before. A science teacher by trade, she was skeptical of anything that didn't come with data and lab results. But grief has a way of pushing boundaries. 3 years ago, her daughter Emily had passed away in a car accident on a rainy night. No answers, no closure, just endless, aching silence. The door opened with a soft jingle, and there she was, Theresa Caputo in leopard print heels, platinum blonde hair teased high, and her signature warmth lighting up the room. Hi, honey, Theresa chirped, walking toward Susan with open arms. You must be Susan. You came all the way from Oregon. Susan nodded, trying to smile. I have to tell you, the moment you walked in, there was a young girl's energy swirling all around you. She's been waiting. Tears sprang to Susan's eyes. She hadn't said a word about Emily. They moved into the reading room. Candles flickered, the light soft, the space filled with the scent of roses and vanilla. Theresa sat across from her, closed her eyes, and took a deep breath. She says her name starts with an E, Emily. She is showing me a rainstorm. And a necklace, something you wear every day. He sees his hand move the silver locket around her neck. Inside was a photo of Emily when she was 8, grinning on a swing. Yes, Susan whispered. I wear it all the time. Theresa's eyes were soft. She's saying she never left you. That night, she says you shouldn't blame yourself. She made a choice. She was driving too fast, but she didn't want you to carry that. The tears came, full and heavy. She shows me sunflowers. Do they mean something to you? Susan laughed through her sobs. They were her favorite. She used to draw them on everything. She paints them for you now, every morning in the sky. For the next hour, Susan listened as Theresa shared messages, little details no one else could know. Her daughter's secret nickname, the time she tried to bake brownies and set off the smoke alarm, the silly ghost stories they used to tell on camping trips. By the end of the session, Suzanne's face was flushed with emotion, but her heart felt lighter than it had in years. Theresa gave her a warm hug. She's always with you, Suzanne. You're never alone, and she wants you to start painting again. Hey. Suzanne froze. She hadn't picked up a brush since Emily died. Back home in Oregon, Susan stood in her quiet studio a week later. She opened a box of paints, dipped her brush, and began to draw sunflowers. And for the first time in 3 years, she smiled without guilt. However, Theresa Caputo stood in front of her mirror, teasing her platinum blonde hair higher with a hot pink comb. Not skinny, but not fat, she mumbled to herself with a grin, just right for talking to the dead. It had been 5 years since the last episode of Long Island Medium aired, and though the cameras had stopped rolling, the spirits hadn't. They never did. They whispered to her in the supermarket, tugged at her thoughts during yoga, and once even made the lights flicker in the nail salon. But Theresa had learned to manage them, most of the time. One rainy Thursday morning in Hicksville, Long Island, Theresa received a call. The voice on the other end was shaky and tearful. Theresa, it's my daughter. She passed in 2019. No one believed me when I said she was trying to reach me. Please, you have to help. Theresa closed her eyes. A strange coldness wrapped around her ankles. I'm already feeling her, she said, her voice steady. She's loud, honey. She's loud and she's not happy. Theresa scribbled an address on a sticky note, stuffed it into her Louis Vuitton bag, and clicked her way to the garage in rhinestone-covered wedges. However, it was a cold, gray October afternoon when 28-year-old Emily Carter stepped off the train at Ronkonkoma, clutching a worn photograph of her grandmother, Rose. The woman had been her guardian angel, raising her after her parents died in a car crash. When Rose passed away last spring, Emily felt an emptiness no words could soothe. But today was different. Private session with none other than Theresa Caputo, the Long Island medium. Known for her big hair, bolder personality, and uncanny ability to connect with the dead, Theresa had become a household name. Emily wasn't a full believer, but something deep in her soul urged her to make the journey. If she arrived at Theresa's modest yet warmly lit home studio, she was greeted with a hug and an almost immediate smirk from the medium. You've got a strong spirit with you already, Theresa said, tilting her head as though listening to someone only she could hear. She keeps showing me a silver locket and a teacup with a chip in it. K. Emily gasped. Rose's locket never left her neck, and the chipped teacup sat untouched on her bookshelf. As they sat, Theresa closed her eyes, speaking words that seemed plucked from Emily's memories. She talked about the bedtime lullabies Rose used to hum, the knitted blankets, the way she always insisted Emily put on 2 pairs of socks in the winter. But she's not just here to say hi, Theresa suddenly said. She wants to remind you of something, about your gift. My gift? Emily asked. You've seen things, felt things, Theresa said. Since you were a kid, you hear voices sometimes, like whispers. You get dreams that come true. That's your intuition, sweetie. It's more than just a hunch. It's spirit talking to you. Kid. Tears welled up in Emily's eyes. She had experienced strange things, waking up with messages in her mind, glimpses of events before they happened, even the sensation that someone was sitting beside her when no one was there. Odds. Don't be afraid, my am. What you carry is a blessing. With Theresa's encouragement, Emily began to explore her intuitive side. She read, she meditated, and she practiced. Within months, she was accurately sensing the emotions of strangers, even helping a grieving mother find peace by passing on a message from her late son. The journey wasn't easy. There were moments of doubt, fear, and overwhelming emotion. But Emily remembered Theresa's words. The veil between the worlds is thin, and love is the thread that sews them together. Ellie Carter became known not just as a gifted intuitive, but as someone who healed hearts, just like the woman who first inspired her to believe, Theresa Caputo. However, Caputo has evolved in her career as the Long Island medium, from tearful reunions with lost loved ones to terrifying messages from beyond. Nothing much surprised her anymore. That was until she got the call from Green Hollow. Green Hollow was a small, mist-shrouded town in upstate New York that seemed to be stuck in time. Quaint houses with peeling paint, Gothic-style churches, and a pervasive silence gave the town an eerie aura. The mayor, desperate and trembling, had called Theresa after strange things began happening. Lights flickering, animals disappearing, whispers in the night, and worst of all, children waking up screaming about shadowy figures with hollow eyes. Theresa arrived with her signature blonde hair, impeccable nails, and skeptical but compassionate heart. Spirits don't just go rogue, she said as she stepped out of her black SUV. Something's holding them here, or something's making them stay. At the town hall, locals crowded around her, sharing their haunted experiences. A woman named Mrs. Kinley said she saw her deceased husband staring at her from the mirror. A young boy claimed that a little girl in old-fashioned clothes kept asking to come in. Even the town priest admitted he could no longer sleep in the chapel. The crucifix kept turning upside down. Visited the old Rembrandt house, a decaying mansion that had long been abandoned after the Rembrandt family was found dead in a mass poisoning a century ago. Locals claimed it was cursed, but Theresa felt drawn to it. Inside, her gift awakened immediately. Cold wind brushed past her, and whispers filled the air. Leave, leave, leave. The words echoed from every direction, but Theresa stood firm. I'm not leaving, she said aloud. You're in pain. I can feel it. Let me help you. Had her dress, her eyes black as night. The air grew heavy. Theresa struggled to breathe. She knew this wasn't an ordinary spirit. This was a poltergeist, born of trauma, rage, and something darker. Through the chaos, Theresa focused on the energy. She closed her eyes and reached out, not with her hands, but with her heart. She saw visions. The Rembrandt family poisoned by their maid, who had gone mad with grief after losing her child. The guilt had bound her spirit here, infecting the house and the land with sorrow and rage. Theresa began to speak to her gently. You were hurt, I know, but you're not alone anymore. It's time to let go. Calling on the spirits of those who had passed to help their sister move on. Slowly the energy shifted, the blackness faded, the woman's face softened, and just like that, she was gone. When Theresa walked out of the house, dawn had broken and the air felt lighter. The town began to heal. Reports of hauntings ceased, and children began to sleep peacefully once again. As she packed her bags to leave Green Hollow, the mayor hugged her and asked, "How can we ever thank you?" Theresa smiled. "Thank the spirits. I just listen." And with that, she drove off into the morning mist, ready for the next battle in her lifelong mission of fighting the spirits, one haunted heart at a time. However, it had been 3 years since Lisa and Mark Dawson lost their only son, Jamie, in a tragic car accident. Not a day went by that Lisa didn't stare at the empty chair at the dining table, or Mark didn't hear Jamie's laughter echo in his dreams. Time was supposed to heal, but their grief felt as raw as it had on that stormy night when everything changed. Desperate for closure, Lisa stumbled upon an old episode of Long Island Medium on television. The woman, Theresa Caputo, seemed sincere, almost eerily gifted. Lisa wasn't the kind of person to chase psychics, but something about Theresa called to her. She felt it deep in her gut, the same gut feeling she had the night Jamie passed, before the phone call ever came. They sat down, and without much introduction, Theresa closed her eyes. "I'm feeling a young male energy coming through very strongly," she said, holding her hand to her heart. "He's saying, 'Mom, stop blaming yourself. Does that mean anything to you?'" A voice of breath caught in her throat. Mark gripped her hand tightly. In accident, he says he wasn't in pain. He says you didn't get to say goodbye, but he's been with you ever since. Lisa's cheeks. "Jamie, that's our son." Theresa opened her eyes and smiled gently. "He says he left something under your bed. A drawing." It was also an old crayon drawing Jamie had made in 3rd grade of their family with the sun smiling above. It had somehow slipped under their bed. Hello. 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 Hello, he says. Tell Dad I'm proud of him for quitting smoking. Hello. Dad. Dad. Hello. 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 Mark's eyes widened. He had stopped smoking 2 months ago in silence, never telling anyone. How would you know that? He whispered. Hello. 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 Softly. He's still your son. He says he visits you in your dreams. He chooses to show you his happy moments, so you won't dwell on the end. The room fell silent, filled with a warmth that felt almost otherworldly. Theresa stood. Jamie wants you to live. He wants you to laugh again. He says he's okay, and that you will be too. They say. When they walked out, Lisa looked up at the sky for the first time in years without tears. Mark wrapped his arm around her, and for the first time since Jamie's death, they felt a whisper of peace. They didn't know what tomorrow would bring, but for the first time in a long time, they believed that love really didn't die, it just changed form. Jamie hadn't left them. He had just gone ahead. Hello, lovely viewers. Welcome to my channel. I am Mina. Hope your day is so well. If you like the video, don't forget to subscribe the channel.